Hello, Internet. You don't need to be good at making art to make good art. I think a great example of this is outsider art or Daniel Johnston as a specific example. If you listen to his music, you're not going to hear what you would perceive as musical skill. It sounds rough. He's not the best performer, but his art is amazing and he's a great songwriter. And then the opposite end of that would be someone like Jacob Collier, where he's super skilled, super proficient at making music, but his music kind of tends to fall flat and there's not as much connection there with most people. So it's not as good of art, even though he's better at making music. And I think this is something that a lot of new artists get caught up in is getting really good at whatever skill that they're trying to learn. Now, I'm not saying that there's no benefit to getting good at, whatever art you're doing. I went to music school. I didn't graduate, but a lot of what I learned in music school, I still apply to making music today. So, getting better at music benefited me in making music. But I don't think it benefited me in making good art necessarily. Because that's something that I don't believe you need to be skilled at to make good art. For example, for me, when I see like a kid's drawings, that to me is some of my favorite art because they're not putting any filters on what they're making and they don't have skill because they're kids. Some kids obviously are like phenoms and they can just do whatever, but like if you see like a 6-year old's drawing, they're not like a classically trained artist. But a lot of times there's something there that like resonates with me in a way that like a super realistic oil painting maybe wouldn't. You know what I mean? Because it's purity, it's expression, it's honest expression. My favorite kind of art, personally, is honest expression. And there's a lot of different ways that that can manifest and that people can do that. There's no right or wrong way to make art. But I think there's this mentality that you have to be at a certain level to even be considered a good artist. You know what I mean? And a lot of people still to this day discredit certain art forms that they don't perceive as requiring skill. I think the two most prevalent examples would be rap music and abstract paintings. Like, you look at a painting in a gallery that's just a bunch of what you perceive as being a bunch of colors on a canvas, and you're like, I can do that. Or, people still to this day hear rap music and they're like, this isn't real music. They're not singing, even though a lot of rap has melody and stuff now, but that's still a prevalent way to think about music and rap music is that it's not real music. It's not real art, which I think is just really stupid and ignorant. Because again, art is something that has existed since the beginning of humanity. Like, would you say that, like, petroglyphs and stuff that have been around for thousands of years are not good art? I don't know. I guess you can really argue both sides of that perspective, but there's so much meaning in something like a petroglyph. You know what I mean? It's not like technically skilled, like realistic art. And, maybe there's some people that would be more impressed if it was, but it's more about the expression of what was happening at that time in the world. And obviously there's, petroglyphs all over the world. So it's not something that is like a uniform way of looking at it, but I just think that skill and good art a lot of times are not mutually exclusive. Like, I grew up being really into metal, like very technical metal, math rock, and those genres require a certain amount of skill to be able to even create or to recreate and perform. You have to be pretty technically skilled at your instrument to be a very good metal musician. And there's a lot of like, how do I want to say this? Like, all right, for example, like that resonates with me more than like jazz does, for example. Whereas jazz, a lot of times the performance is more loose. All right, sorry, I'm comparing technical metal and jazz right now. So technical metal is very rigid a lot of the times. It's very like square, whereas jazz is much more fluid and loose. But the technicality of metal comes from the performance, and the technicality of jazz also comes from the performance, but it's more about like the music theory. I think this I'm making generalizations just to try to portray my point. But for some reason, I resonate with metal more than I resonate with jazz. I like both genres of music, but jazz to me seems more inaccessible and pretentious than metal. But I'm sure, they're both can be perceived in that way. I just grew up in the metal scene and hardcore music. So it's like something that I connect with more. And again, ultimately, that's what art comes down to is what do you connect with? What resonates with you? When it hits your body, the frequencies are literally resonating in your body. And there's certain frequencies that resonate with you better than other frequencies. And it's different for every person because we're all different. We have different bodies, we have different perceptions. So if you like a type of art that people think is stupid, or if you like a type of music that people think is not good music, that doesn't matter because if you like it, then it's good. You know what I mean? If you're making art that people are perceiving as amateur or they're perceiving as like, not technically skilled enough to be considered real art, if you like it and it gives you joy in making it, who gives a fuck? Why do you care? Don't worry about what they think. Everyone's going to have their opinion. And there's always going to be a group of people that like something if you like it. It may not be the biggest group of people, but also there's certain times where maybe people just don't know about it and they would like it if they knew about it. So you could be the first person to bring a certain type of art to certain people. And that's how I perceive it. It's like, again, I say this on my channel every day, every week, and I always say this too, but people forget that art has no rules. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. So do it. That's all I want to say for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I put out a new video every Sunday. So if you liked this video, you can come back next week for a new one, and I will see you then.